carry permit or something.
What's going on YouTube? Welcome to my review of the Glock 34 MOS 9mm pistol and a discussion on whether it is worthwhile to add a red dot to your pistol for competition or defense. Bear in mind though that the technical aspect of the review will not focus on Glock versus Smith & Wesson or any other pistol platform, but more about the utility and design of the Glock MOS modular optics system. This review is organized into the following section. I'm going to start with a brief developmental history of optics on pistols. Then I'm going to give a technical overview of the Glock 34 MOS. I'm going to follow up with a discussion about borrowing a fancy nuts term, POU, philosophy of use. What do you hope to accomplish by putting a red dot on your pistol? What are the performance advantages of a red dot on a pistol for competition and defensive use? Finally, I'm going to go over accessory and upgrade considerations with a quick discussion of relative value. Shooters have been doing custom milling to install red dots on their Glock slides for years, but 2015 was the first year that Glock had factory-produced models with a slide cut to accept a red dot. Last year, US customers could only get the competition and hunting models with the MOS, but now the Glock 17 and 19 have options for the MOS. Before that, Smith & Wesson had M&P models that were factory cut for red dots, and FN made the FN FNX Tacticool in 45 ACP with cuts for a slide-mounted red dot. From my research, as of the recording of this video, these are the only factory model centerfire handguns that can accept a red dot mounted deep within the slide. The Kydex TP9 is getting a budget race gun makeover with its slide cut to accept a red dot, which should be available sometime in 2016. Reports of the 6-hour P320RX, a P320 with a factory-installed SIG Romeo red dot, have been floating around since early 2015, and Cabela's even had a listing for them on their website for a while, but the release date kept getting pushed back. They might finally be launching in 2016. To see how the MOS works and how to mount the Trijicon RMR, watch my earlier video about the Glock MOS. You'll see the sight picture of the Trijicon RMR and how it co-witnesses in different lighting conditions. The MOS can accept different optics like the Burris Fastfire, which is a budget option, or the Loophole Delta Point, but I decided on the Trijicon RMR because it has models available with fiber optics and tritium dual illumination, so you never have to worry about changing out batteries. This video will be too long if I also did a review of the Trijicon RMR, so again, watch my earlier Glock MOS video for some earlier thoughts, and keep an eye out for a video review at a later date. The MOS mounting system itself is not very robust. The MOS slides had to sacrifice some mounting security in order to be adaptable to a variety of optic choices. You only have about 2 threads of engagement when securing the mounting plate to the slide, and when securing the optic to the plate, so Loctite is critical. The Glock screws are flimsy and easy to strip. If you want to use the Trijicon screws, you have to buy a spacer, which Glock nor Trijicon tell you about when specifically referencing the Glock MOS. So yeah, buy the adapter plate for the Glock MOS, which is sold separately from most RMR SKUs. I'm not a Glock engineer, but I do feel as though the MOS design was rushed to market. Then again, it may be possible that this was the only configuration that made it possible to accommodate different optics. CZ Custom did manage to mill a PO9 slide to accept different optics without the need for mounting plates. My RMR had kept it 0 and remained rock solid, but I still wouldn't use the red dot as a slide racking aid unless I absolutely had to. What I don't have a problem with is the mounting depth. Some shooters would prefer the RMR to sit lower within the slide, but I feel the MOS height is the perfect balance in providing co-witness with the suppressor height sights when needed and preventing the suppressor height sights from being too obstructive when not needed. These are Ameriglow suppressor height sights, even though they're marked Trijicon. Trijicon, I believe, produces the vials, and Ameriglow utilizes them in their sights. Save for the optics cut, the Glock 34 MOS is virtually identical to the Glock 34 Gen 4. The barrel is 5.31 inches long. The slide has one large port to keep the upper assembly mass closer to the Glock 17s so as to not require too much fiddling with recoil springs for timing. The factory 17-pound recoil springs are interchangeable between the Gen 4 Glock 17 and Gen 4 Glock 34. The recoil spring assembly has a captive polymer guide rod wrapped with dual springs, a feature of the Gen 3 subcompact in all Gen 4 Glocks. The gun comes with adjustable polymer sights, which I'm not quite sure what I did with, so I don't have them for this video. Therefore, I do think most MOS owners are going to be replacing the factory sights with a set of suppressor height sights. Mine are by Ameriglow. Some will have a preference to have completely blacked out sights so that you don't have any dots interfering with your sight picture, no probability of the dots catching your eye, but I still prefer to have the dots, the night sight tritium lamp dots, because as I've shown in my previous MOS video, at night when you're aiming from a dark room into a well-lit area, there's the possibility of a washout where the fiber optics on the sight don't quite kick in and the dot's really difficult to pick up. Therefore, you do need to co-witness the sights to get a more consistent and more reliable sight picture. Moving on, some optics will still be set too high for any suppressor heights to co-witness with them, like the Burst Fastfire 3 or the Loophole. I was about to combine the two words, Loophole Delta Point Pro Gen 2 basically. I know those two are going to be set too high to co-witness with the suppressor height sights. There's probably several others, but what did I just ramble on for the last minute and a half about? Oh yeah, suppressor height sights. So what else is there to say about the Glock 34 MOS technical specifications? Well, the fire control group does come with the Glock minus connector pre-installed, so the trigger should break closer to 4.5 to 5 pounds instead of the standard 5.5 to 6 pounds. The brass to face problems of the Gen 4 Glock, specifically the extractor, are also present on the Glock MOS, but I feel it's more problematic due to the reduced slide velocity from the additional weight of the RMR. If you remember from my shooting clips, you can see the brass roll off of my forearms. That was with Freedom Munitions 135 grain. Hold on a sec, I got a box of that to show you what it looks like. So that was with the Freedom Munitions 135 grain ammo. And Freedom Munitions loads tend to be underpowered, whether they're remanufactured or new brass. It even happens with Winchester White Box and Federal and CCI, basically all American spec economy grade ammo. European economy grade 9mm, like from PPU, MagTech, SMB, and Perfecta from Walmart, run hotter loads, and the spent casings eject with more force than from the American-made economy grade 9mm. I did get some brass to face with the first 400 rounds or so, even when shooting perfected from Walmart. But after some more break-in, the ejection improves to where you don't have to worry about any more brass to face. It's funny though, because if you bring the problem up with Glock, they'll reference their perfection marketing slogan, stick their fingers in their ears and go la la la. Many have sent their Gen 4s to Glock for brass to face service, but pretty much everyone has gotten their pistol sent back with Glock saying, we just put a box through and you're good to go. Regardless, if you shoot European spec ammo, you should be free of most problems after a little break-in. Overall, I've not had problems with reliable cycling. I did have one malfunction, but that was on my first range trip with, you guessed it, Freedom Munitions underpowered ammo using a Glock factory magazine pin to hold 10 rounds. The pin stops the spring's regular decompression, so I was lucky the gun even cycled at all. I've since gotten some aftermarket magazines from a Virginia gun store. This is the Magpul one, and this is one from ETS. Regardless of advertising fluff, the ETS ones are not good to go. The Glock ones are very good to go. I just really want to rant very hard about ETS products, but Glock ones or Stenag are not good to go. I do feel that if I get started, you guys won't hear the rest of the Glock MOS review, so I'll leave my ETS rant for another video. Okay, well, 5 minutes later into the review, I forgot one feature to mention in the Glock 34. MOS or non-MOS, you do get the extended slide stop. Now let's discuss POU. The Glock 34 is not going to be my primary competition pistol because I shoot in the TAC Optics division, and you would have to move to the open division if you wanted to use a pistol with an optic. The reason I still wanted a centerfire pistol that was factory milled to accept a red dot optic was to add a new dynamic to my training. With a parallax-free red dot, the sight alignment fundamental of shooting proficiency becomes a non-factor. It's easier to shoot with both eyes open, but both eyes open shooting is a skill that everyone should develop early and often, as you'll have better situational awareness and less muscle strain. You are all but guaranteed to quickly acquire a clear sight picture when shooting through a red dot versus when aligning iron or polymer sights if you're using the Glock factory sights, when you have to pound it in your brain to bring the front sight in focus, which blurs out the target. I found that getting proper sight alignment was one of the reasons that I hesitated before taking my first shot after drawing. I'm cross-dominant, meaning that even though I'm right-handed, my left eye is my dominant eye, resolving the straight-on focal point, and the right eye gives an angled view for that perception. My refrigerator just started buzzing. It's the drawback of recording in an apartment. Sorry. Where was I? Instead of squeezing my left eye closed, I tilt my head to align my left eye with the sights so I can shoot with both eyes open. The parallax-free red dot sight makes sight alignment a non-factor to my speed and accuracy, so I can concentrate on other fundamentals like trigger squeeze and muscle coordination. With more practice on those fundamentals, it allows me to go back to a gun with iron sights only with the confidence in knowing that I have the muscle memory for correct trigger squeeze and muscle coordination, so now I don't have to devote any of my active thinking to anything except sight picture and getting rounds on target quickly. I'll try not to sound like I'm exaggerating or overstating the benefits. I'll probably fail though, but simply put, a red dot on a pistol is a game changer. Whether you're a sponsored competitor who makes a living from shooting sports or you're just a novice starting out, shooting with a red dot instead of iron sights improves your speed and precision. I've had so many people try out the Glock MOS and say, I'm normally horrible with Glock, but there's no way you can't not shoot well when you have a red dot that does all the work for you. There's no learning curve to using a pistol with an optic. Just like with a rifle, you put the dot where you want the rounds to hit and let them fly. The smaller dot, 7 MOA in my RMR, allows you to get tighter group sizes on paper and hit precision targets that the thick front sight post would have covered up entirely. Although a red dot can enhance shooting skills, it cannot offset or replace the importance of pistol training fundamentals. Red dot or not, if you want to shoot quickly and accurately, the same pistol handling mechanics are important. When drawing, you can't just extend the pistol out and look for the dots, because the window is way too small. You would have been faster to get on target just using the iron sights. When drawing, you still have to index your dominant eye on your front sight when presenting the gun towards your target. But once your optic comes reasonably aligned with your front sight, then the dot will come into view, and now you can shift your focus to the target. As a cross-dominant shooter, even though I can align the optic over my right eye, I still choose to aim with my left eye because it's how I index on the front sight, and it's much faster to reacquire the dot after the slide cycles. Although everyone will benefit from shooting through an optic instead of iron sights, the degree of improvement will vary based on the shooter's experience. A high-volume shooter with years of pistol training will only see slight improvement because sight alignment is second nature to them. Glock 45 is a cross-dominant shooter, and he shoots better with irons than most shooters can shoot with a red dot. A novice shooter using a red dot can easily halve their time and double their accuracy. The type of targets also make a difference on how much your performance will improve. For torso-sized targets at common defensive ranges, you're not going to notice any difference. For poppers or small plates at 25 yards, you'll definitely appreciate having a red dot. It's important to have realistic expectations based on your shooting experience and the type of shooting you do at the range. You can also close the performance gap by using a pistol with irons only by upgrading to a set of quality competition sights. Many factory pistols come with 3-dot or non-contrast sights, which makes it harder to index your vision on just the front sight when it's easy for the rear sight to pull your eye's focus away if it has colored dots. Going with a blacked out rear and a large front dot or fiber optic is a massive improvement. Here's a clip of me shooting my CZ with an upgraded trigger in competition sights. I didn't measure with a shot timer, but the performance comparison seems pretty similar compared to what I did with the Glock and the stock trigger in RMR. Try upgrading to competition sights before deciding on a red dot pistol. You might improve enough that you feel like you won't need a red dot to reach your performance goals. The Glock with the RMR has met all my expectations for performance at the range, but for real-world defensive and carry use, how much benefit would a pistol with a red dot have over a pistol with only iron sights? Keep in mind though that I'm not speaking from military or law enforcement experience. All of my thoughts about defensive use come from the literature review. In real-world defensive shooting situations with pistols, very little shooting is actually precision-aimed shooting. Microseconds count in a deadly force situation. You simply don't have the time to get sight alignment like you're in a bullseye match. The maximum range at which most pistol defensive shootings occur is 7 yards. Even without seeing the sights, point shooting, which is literally just pointing the gun in the assailant's direction and squeezing the trigger, is good enough to reliably hit center mass enough times through half a magazine to stop the assailant. Proficiency on the range doesn't translate into effectiveness in a deadly force situation. In the data from the NYPD SOP9 report, which is one of the most comprehensive sources on police shooting statistics, officers who were in the higher percentiles on range scoring had no statistically significant advantage in hit percentage in defensive shootings compared to officers who were at the lower end of the range score spectrum. The hit percentage against assailants without a firearm is about 30%, and in gunfights, the hit percentage can drop down to as low as 11%. And yes, most of that data comes from before the NYPD adopted the heavy Glock triggers. That's not to say that you can't train to improve your performance under stress. It's just that training for bullseye precision isn't representative of the instinctive shooting skills you need to develop, and a red dot won't help you get there. Nothing can replace proficiency in defensive shooting fundamentals. Therefore, the ability to have a red dot on your pistol should not be a major factor in deciding on a pistol for defensive use. However, I can think of ways having a red dot could negatively impact the pistol's defensive performance. Maybe reliability due to the increased slide mass. I haven't had problems with it outside of my first range trip. Again, that was using the botched Glock magazine shooting Freedom munitions, so that may not be, the most representative data point. What other potential problems are there? Well, if you're aiming near a light source like car headlights or something, I would imagine that your screen would glare up, but doesn't that happen with iron sights anyway? Optical failure? I mean, you should be learning to shoot with iron sights anyway. That's why you need co-witness iron sights in case of optical failure if your pistol has a red dot for defensive use. I've searched for data on whether any United States police departments have approved red dots on duty pistols, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I've not found any that have given department-wide blanket authorization for red dots on duty pistols. There have only been individual forum posts from officers, air quotes, who have outfitted their duty pistol with an optic. But again, you have to take these posts with not just a grain of salt, but pick up the entire salt shaker and go to town, because who knows how many of these officers are actually LEO and how many of them are the stolen valor type people, living vicariously through the sacrifices of others. That's a mental health issue that would take way too long to finish discussing in a gun review video. Moving on, I've only seen one source on the Glock MOS used in military service, aka seen in the wild, and that's from the Greek Special Forces. Even so, I feel that putting a red dot on a pistol is game planning for 0.01% of tactical scenarios where a red dot would actually matter on a pistol. Again, I can't see it being a detriment, but for duty or service use, if you're in a situation where you have the time to aim down sights and you need the precision of a red dot, then the situation will be better resolved with a shotgun or a rifle. Rounding out the POU discussion, why in particular would you want to choose the Glock 34 over the Glock 17 or the Glock 19 MOS? With an optic, the increased sight radius of the full frame models is worthless. For defensive considerations, you might get 15 feet per second more bullet velocity going from the 4-inch barrel of the Glock 19 to the 5.31-inch barrel of the Glock 34. So is there any reason to choose the full frame Glocks when the Glock 19 is arguably a better fit for most shooters' hands, easier to carry, and easier to point fire? I still chose the Glock 34 because for me, carry comfort is a non-factor, and I also chose the Glock 34 for the slight edge in shooting comfort and controllability over the Glock 17. The difference in recoil between the Glock 34 and the Glock 17 is going to be subtle, probably not enough for most to justify the added size of the 34 over the 17, but I favor anything that minimizes shooting fatigue over high round count range sessions. Talk to any bench rest shooter about the effects of accumulated recoil. Most of the F-class bench rest community has a money no object approach to their equipment, but there's a reason why you don't see much 338 Lapua or other Magnum action calibers in F-class matches, and why short action calibers continue to set records. It doesn't matter if you're Marcus Luttrell or Bob Lee Swagger, cumulative felt recoil affects your mechanics, and you can get sloppy until you sleep it off. The same concept applies to pistols. Minimizing felt recoil over the course of a long, high round count shooting session keeps your skill sharper, and you won't have as many misses in the later stages. So is there any point in choosing the Glock 19 with an RMR? Without MOS considerations, many choose the Glock 19 because of its ease of carry and or concealment over the Glock 17, and the grip is a better fit for most. But having a red dot increases the pistol's profile and could print through some clothes, minimizing the advantages of the compact form factor, so you have conflicting design choices that minimize the strengths of each. You reduce compactness and you don't have the controllability of the full frame Glocks to optimize for the speed advantage of shooting with an optic. For an all-in-one gun, home defense, carry, and target shooting, the Glock 19 is still a viable option, As mentioned earlier, you are not hindered by the shorter sight radius on the compact Glock because you have an optic. The difference in recoil going from the 17 to the 19 is much more noticeable than the recoil difference going from the 34 to the 17, but the snappier Glock 19 is still very comfortable for typical defensive ranges, but will require more time to get back on target for competition-style courses of fire. There are no shortage of options for Glock modifications, but how many of them are actually upgrades? Some Glock owners just want an improved trigger, and some Glock owners want the whole race gun treatment. So I feel like I'm going to rustle a lot of jimmies with my suggestions on Glock modifications. Many Glock accessories on the market drastically reduce the reliability, and their parts do not pass the long-term durability test of Glock factory original parts. And here's where the comments start flowing with, "I've got this upgrade kit and it's worked flawlessly through X number of rounds." Good for you. The reality that many Glock tuners don't want to face is that Glocks are harder to tune than many hammer-fired pistols. With a few number of action components, each part has a greater relative importance. The design specifications have a much tighter tolerance to allow each part to do double duty while ensuring proper clearances and correct timing. Domestic startup firearm manufacturing companies simply don't have the overhead to perform the industrial level reliability testing that Glock does, and if you think they do, then you're deluded. Firearm accessory manufacturing has a slim overhead, with some companies flirting with being in the red year-round. It's not to say that Glocks cannot be reliable race guns. It just takes a ridiculous amount of dedication that the average enthusiast cannot devote. The race guns are often tuned to a custom hand load and will choke on any other ammo. Even then, in matches I've gone to, I've seen Glock race guns choke the most out of any other gun, even for a shooter with more experience than me shooting their custom hand loads. If you want your Glock to have the same reliability that Glock built their reputation around, then I cannot, in good conscience, recommend you pursue modifying your Glock's action. If you're willing to accept a potential decrease in reliability, then go crazy with any trigger kit that you want, any connector kit, any whatever. Go with the titanium nitride firing pin block plunger if you want. You don't have to listen to me. I'm a literal nobody in the world of firearms, but I'm just saying that the Glock accessory market is the perfect embodiment of just because you can doesn't mean you should. Again, this is a touchy subject, so I'll just let it go for now. To mount your red dot, you can also use a rear sight dovetail or a rail mount. Are these reliable or effective? Maybe. Sorry, I don't have a more in-depth opinion. But with aftermarket mounting solutions, you do lose the, here's another fancy nuts term, second kind of cool from using the MOS system. To maintain the second kind of cool, you can choose to get your slide custom milled for a red dot, but please go to a reputable gunsmith. I've seen a lot of botched milling jobs with poor alignments. Sometimes the optic mounts off center, or the cut was so deep that it exposed the striker spring. If you don't already own a Glock and you want one that accepts a slide mounted red dot, then there's no reason not to get the MOS model. It comes in at a lower price than getting the custom milling work, and you don't have to destroy the resale value of the Glock that you sent for custom milling. The tack light I've been shooting with is the Inforce APL Applied Pistol Light. I chose this one over competing models because of its affordability and because it only uses one CR123A battery, helping to cut down on weight. The Glock 34 is the only pistol that I can tolerate shooting with a tack light. The loaded pistol without the tack light already has a well-balanced feel, with the large port on the slide minimizing a front heavy weight distribution, so the tack light actually works as a counterweight in reducing muzzle jump. With some more top-heavy guns like the CZ P09, shooting with a tack light actually feels like you're just adding more inertia to the gun, which polarizes both the muzzle jump and the muzzle drop when the slide returns the battery. With a tac light equipped Glock, I do feel as though it's a little slower to get on target because of the increased overall weight of the pistol, but getting successive shots on each target is much easier due to the reduced muzzle jump. The custom Kydex holster that I ordered for the Glock 34 MOS with the Enforce APL is the Duty KT Azalea with a sick cryptic mandrake camo pattern. I opted for a thumb brake for active retention and the Blade Tech lock for the belt attachment platform. There you go. So opens like that. You can also mount it in different ways to adjust can, and you can adjust the passive retention with these. So yeah, very happy with the holster. KT also had very good customer service, very responsive, even if I wanted a few changes made here and there, like I requested that they add the camo finish and the thumb brake even after I ordered the original pistol. They were very accommodating, so A+ on the customer service from KT. The KT holsters are already cut for suppressor height sights. There are some holster designers like Safariland that offer Glock MOS holsters that cover the optic entirely, reducing the chance that the optic will snag and knock the slide out of battery. In summary, the Glock MOS platform gives the shooter many options for mounting their optic of choice. Shooting with a red dot can be a game changer depending on shooter experience and the type of targets. For defensive applications, the option to add a red dot should not be a deciding factor in weapon choice. That's not to say you should rule out ever modifying your Glock, but if the only way you can enjoy shooting a Glock is if it has mods, especially permanent, irreversible ones, then I know it's hard to hear this, but maybe the gun isn't for you. Thank you very much for watching this video. My name is David. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for more firearms reviews. Hope you guys enjoyed. Aha, now I'm being redundant. I already said I hope you guys enjoy. Well, what else am I going to talk about regarding Glocks? Many technical details coming in future videos, as well as full review of just the Trijicon RMR. But no, I'm going to leave you guys now. I'm going to say bye-bye. Bye.